mean, the traditional big names, Sony, Warner, Burton, etc., they've been in the business of owning catalogs mainly from their own artists for many decades. What's happened in the last decade is that new sources of capital, often new managers like Hypnosis and Primary Wave, have come along. And they have gradually, as their returns have become impressive, they then themselves have tended to be gobbled up by larger private equity players. So, I mean, yes, private equity is always on the hunt for the next big thing. I think that private equity managers like the stability of the underlying cash flows at the time when perhaps the economic environment is obviously much more difficult to forecast. So I do think that shows you this is much more of a mainstream asset. And I think there are also a couple of listed vehicles on the UK stock market. Round Hill Music is another one of those. So, you've got a new range of investors, retail investors who like the listed vehicles because they like the income. And then you've got the private equity investors who see the growth there. And then if we move on to other assets in the same intellectual property field, I think there are emerging opportunities in video games, virtual reality, etc. So I think this is the whole concept of consuming from home and consuming more media in a cost of living crisis is also something to bear in mind. I mean, we've had a big pop in the last 6 months, sort of post-COVID pop, where people have wanted to travel, wanted to have the real experience. But as we get into winter, as the reality of the cost of living hits home, then I believe that some of those trends that were established during the lockdown years will reassert themselves. People will be working from home, or when they're working from home or shopping from home, they tend to consume more media. So what you want to do is to own media, not necessarily the platforms, but own the content. And music, I think, and video games is a very big proportion of that.
Stephen, do you think it was the Universal Music Group that really set the scene for the sector? Because when that came to market and the IPO got a decent price, it stayed above water. From there we saw the Deezer listing, which didn't go as well. But do you think that's been a catalyst for change of ownership taking place in the sector?
I do. I mean, Spotify's listing as well, if you go back a few years. I mean, I think, intellectual property as opposed to, let's say, real estate or property, if you go back 10 years ago, there were questions about the legality, there were questions about piracy, and people were uncomfortable owning something which was, by definition, intangible. Fast forward into the modern world, we're all using intangibles all the time. I think people are seeing the success of Universal as a bellwether for saying, yes, although these things are intangible, the legality of the ability to protect the income is definitely there, has been tested. I mean, I remind you that an artist, so in the case of Pink Floyd, the artist is still alive, there are 75 years on the clock before the copyright rolls off. So these are very long protected assets. And I think that's where some interesting money is coming into it.